Hello, we're Nerds of the West, and today we are giving you our thoughts, our review on Imperium Classics. We will say before we dive in that this is our first gameplay, this is our first initial review of this game at 2 players only, to see if this game might be right for you, to see if this game might earn a spot in your collection, and ultimately put it on our Nerds of the West ranking board, which we re-rank at the end of the year. Everyone at Nerds gives their vote on each game, and we'll re-rank it and decide whether or not a game, not if it's 1 to 10, but just if given the opportunity, what we would prefer to play. We are the people that are doing this. My name is Tom.
I'm Sean.
Sean, can you tell us what Imperium Classics is?
Yeah, so Imperium Classics is a card drafting
Deck
game.
building.
Card deck building game, which you are essentially trying to build your deck up with cards which allow you to get victory points to then, at a certain point of the game, you'll either trigger the end by having all of the cards in a certain pile depleted, or you would have built all of a certain type of card that you have access to, or you will have gone through another deck which gives a bulk amount of victory points but then triggers the end of the game at the end. So
some real strong bonuses as well.
Yeah, and some real strong bonuses from those cards.
It's a game of developing your nation.
Yes, it's a civilization building game.
There's a lot of resource management to be done, but also not that many resources you have. You have your cards, you have your civilization, your citizen tokens, and some resource tokens, and that's about it. There's not that many crazy choices going on until you start looking at all of the cards that there are. Because you have your deck of cards that you start with, you have your history cards that you're going to take from under your city and give you stronger cards than the bonuses, or stronger cards than the ones you started with, and then a whole lot of different cards as they come out through this deck. Both the ones that you separate, so you are seeing specific cards, and the random main card deck that is here. This is a game of so many choices, and I guess that's what makes it a strategy game, is you don't know which one you're going to go down, but you've got to have a really strong foothold of what your civilization starts as to actually be able to make those choices later on. That's what stuck out most to me, was that strong start, and I think I bought a few too many cards at the start, but they were powerful in their own way. What stuck out most to you about this game?
Is I like the choices of putting stuff away in your history, thinking about that. And I think very similar to what you said, the start, there's the ability to get your civilized cards, which you can't use at the start of the game because of a mechanic being a barbarian state. You
start as a barbarian, you're not a full civilization yet.
Correct.
And then eventually you turn into an
empire, which then will allow you to use those civilized cards. So you were going straight out and getting those civilization cards. We can't use them to begin with. But then we made that transition, which unfortunately for you took a little bit longer because I managed to ramp into it.
Well, I also had one more card than you to get to that point.
Yeah. But then once you did, you had all of those cards at your fingertips to start using, where I had pretty much no civilization cards, civilized cards. So I think that's what stuck out to me, is the choice of, do I get into these early and sort of hamper my early game because I have too many more cards to go through, or not, and have a slimmer deck, but then have to get into them later. Also, I do like the ability to put cards away into history or garrison them away.
Yeah, there were multiple ways you could thin out your deck.
Yeah.
There were cards that you would put into your history. There are cards that you would garrison under other cards, basically going, it's a way to hide a card under there but still get it back later, which I thought was a really interesting mechanic, that you could go, cool, I might want this card later. It's a way that I hid those civilized cards until I needed them. But you could also then have the unrest cards, which were the negative point cards, the deck clogging cards that quite a lot of deck building games have. But you could get rid of them. If you had a whole handful of them, you could take a whole action just to get rid of them. We never saw that, but it is an option. Or you could pay resources to get rid of them as you go. The resource management was a really interesting part to me, because I was spending resources early to get cards early, while you seemed to bank a lot of resources to then develop those cards when you did finally get through your deck and become an empire.
Yeah. So that, I did notice that as well. I had bulk resources at the start that I didn't use until I got to the point where I could then develop and use those resources to buy those development cards. So
we played with 2 of the civilizations, and there are 8 in the box to start with?
I think so. I think there's a few, yeah.
I'm really curious. This game is suggested to play at 2 players, which is why we played it at 2 players. Solo game might come in the future.
Yeah.
I don't think I would want to play this game at more than 2 players.
Yeah, no.
It would be so heavy with so many things to track.
Yeah.
Like, this game is solitary enough that you don't need to interact with other people, but God, trying to track and stop other people from doing things, because I think that was where my downfall was I didn't stop you in your game plan enough. And trying to stop multiple people at once would be way too much.
Now, that's something I wanted to touch on. So we played the most basic of the civilizations, like 1 star out of 5. So the most straightforward. I think as you move up into the more hardcore ones, that's when the player interaction happens a lot more. And I think the game will slow down in the respect that it becomes more like chess. Whereas I felt this feels very much like chess to me. I'm watching you, what you're doing. And then if I can do something to slow you down, that's obviously going to help me out a lot.
Yeah, because you're not slowing them down turn by turn. You're also slowing down their overall plans. You can clog up someone's deck if you know they're trying to develop really quickly. You can destroy their regions if you know they're going to go for that glory card.
Yeah.
And it was really intuitive in the way that it did that, because those choices to go for glory, to go for buying certain cards, were common between the 2 of us. I could see, all right, if I can do this before you, then I'll get these cards before you that we want, or I can see you're building up towards that. Unfortunately, I didn't get to stop you the final time that you used glory, but there were those choices to hinder you towards that.
And we didn't really see that though this game, like a lot of that. I think as we move up and play the more difficult civilizations, that'll become more apparent, and it'll really be, I'm grabbing this card because that'll help me counter what you're trying to do and that sort of stuff. So, I'm keen to try some of the harder ones out, because I think that'll slow the game down, but not in the way of just making it longer. It's going to mean, like what chess is slow. I'm going to watch your move and I'm going to think about how to play off of your move and hamper what you're trying to ramp up to do, but then also bolster myself.
Yeah,
that's what it's going to do.
It's interesting because it's a deck building game, and deck building games, I usually love them because they had very limited mechanics. You're just trying to do the best with what you've got. This, you were planning ahead. You were trying to build your deck ahead of time to be able to pull off the right moves at the right time. But there were so many keywords and so many different things you could do each turn, even though you only had 3 actions each turn, that your analysis paralysis was definitely a consideration, but it also felt like you were always pushed to keep the game moving. You couldn't really stall people out as much. It was just do the best you can, but you have a lot of options for what you think is best, which is what makes it a strategy game and not just a deck building game.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see if any of the other, how complex the other decks and how much those gameplay options evolve and open up because of that. My deck felt very much like just get resources and do things.
Yeah.
While I think a lot of the other games, we didn't really see unrest come into it, but you can get to the point where you are spitting out so much unrest that it can trigger the end of the game early.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I like that there's those kind of direct attacks that can be made.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the unrest side of things will like that deck depleting will be more of like a bigger player count, because you'll have more people dishing
100%.
that stuff up. Whereas we're a 2-player game, you can kind of negate that a little bit. There is less unrest in the deck overall if you're playing less players. Like the game scales, putting more cards in a little bit, not a huge amount, but a little bit if you go to a higher player count.
Yeah.
So
as a strategy game, I'm trying to figure out if there's what I missed in the way that I needed to win. I don't know if I could have done much better with what cards came out this game. That's not to say that I couldn't, I think the main thing was stopping you from getting tributary cards, but
I think it was just you had too many cards.
Yeah.
I think having the amount of cards you have for a measly 3 extra victory points is what that, because I think you were going that way because
I wasn't necessarily going though. It was more I was trying to get good cards early to stop you getting them.
Right.
But I don't know if that necessarily worked out in my advantage or not.
Yeah.
But
probably putting more away into your histories, because that's what I was doing a lot of. Could have helped you out. just slimming your deck down maybe a little bit more to help with that speed, especially to counter my speed with my increased hand side and everything. That's probably what would have helped you a lot.
But I appreciate that those strategic choices come out in... It's just a card game. Like, that's, I think, what is most surprising to me. There is no, like, major components that you're interacting with, a board that you're moving stuff around on. It's just the cards that are in front of you.
Yeah.
And I like the way that there was the different areas with the different cards, so stuff was coming out at different times. And I think most of all, I like the art in this game.
Yeah.
It's very stylized.
It is.
And it's quite evocative. I'm curious to see, because most of these are my starting cards, while all the regions look a little bit different, and all the different civilizations, while they're all cartoonish, there's some are more stylized, more personalized than others. While all feeling not cohesive, I don't think, but you're like, okay, cool. This is this area of the world.
Yeah, and I think they have done a good job of trying to retain the feeling of the game of you are playing an empire, you're building up. It's somewhat like a little bit of a serious tone, but then they've lightened it up a little bit with the card art, but kept it grounded. If they had gone full cartoon, I think that would have taken away from the game.
I will say the box art doesn't yell out to me. Like, I don't think I would like be drawn to that if it was sitting on a shelf at a game store.
Yeah.
That's not to say it's bad. I just think it's not quite eye-catching.
Yeah.
Personal opinion, I think, more than anything, but it is a consideration to be made.
It doesn't really show you much. It just says players, like this to me says players of civilization, right? Yeah. But what are you doing? What are you getting out of it? Doesn't really show that.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I can definitely think I would recommend this to people who like Civilization.
Mm-hmm.
I think someone in our chat joked this is the unholy abomination of the love child of Magic the Gathering and Civilization.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels that way.
Yeah. If you're a bit of a history buff and you like this sort of thing, I reckon this is going to be a big hit for you.
Yeah. While not being too crunchy. This isn't a like Europa Universalis full-on history sim.
No.
This is build your little city, get your little strategy going, and it plays fairly quickly.
Yeah.
We played this in about 2.5, 3 hours, which you kind of double your time when you're playing on stream. So playing for an hour and a half is not bad for a heavier 2-player game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it to be much longer.
No. Then that's exactly where the point comes in. It's like once you move up to a 3 and 4 player game, it will drag out. So I think 2 is definitely the sweet spot.
Definitely. But the most important question for us is where would we rank it on our board now that we've considered all the different things? It's going to be quite a tough one because I don't know how many other members at Nerds will get to play this game throughout the year. So maybe our vote will be quite important. And there is a decent tabletop sim mod if you are wanting to try this game out. Personally, when looking for a 2-player game, I want it to be shorter. I like the fact that this is a decently weighty, decently long 2-player game, but that's not what I look for. A 2-player game for me is coming home at the end of the day, playing a game with my partner, not a game that I'm breaking out because I want a longer, heavier game.
Okay.
So that makes it quite hard for me to judge. Mm-hmm. It's not to say it's a bad game, but it is going to drop quite far down.
Okay.
Once again, we rank not on if the game is good, just if given the opportunity, what we would prefer to play. So for me, this is going down below Lost Ruins of Arnak, the Explorers Expedition Leaders expansion.
Okay. Yeah, right. What other sort of 2-player games do we have there? Do we have any?
Star Realms, all the way at the top.
Yeah, but it's super quick, right?
Super quick, like you can play that in 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I will always play Star Realms over this. I love Star Realms. I will get a Star Realms tattoo someday.
Yeah, spaceship, man. You got to get a spaceship.
Iki is quite good at 2 players, definitely more on the weighty side as well. I would probably play Iki over this at 2 players.
Yeah.
There's just more choices and more going on. Northgard, you can play at 2 players, a very similar like engine building game, while this is much more dudes on a map. Azul, I love Azul at 2 players. I will play, like that's the thing. This is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not what I'm looking for at 2 players.
See, for me, I enjoy the heavier side of games, so I think I'd break this out more than what you would because of that reason. But where to put it on here?
Pick another game that you like.
Well, I think if we were to... I think for me, it would sit somewhere here. I'm just trying to find where the ceiling is for it. See, Space Base is a 2-player game, right?
Space Base, amazing 2-player game.
Yeah. See, for me, it would be better than Space Base. But would it go much higher? Wingspan Duet, I haven't played that.
Wingspan Asia Duet is what I would look for in a slightly more in-depth 2-player game. Like, that's a good, 45-hour. So that fits a bit nicer for me.
Yeah, I think it's going to sit somewhere in here for me. So if you're down here and I'm here, it's going
to sit somewhere in the middle here. But we will re-rank this list at the end of the year. Everyone who has played each game will vote on the game. We'll get a whole list and re-rank everything so you can catch that stream. Because I don't know if we mentioned it. We did this live, twitch.tv/nerdsofthewest. You can come and join us every single weekend for some board gaming action. That is our thoughts on Imperium Classics. If you want us to play more, if you want to see Sean play solo, or if you want to tell us you're wrong and we played this game wrong and we need to do better, leave those comments in YouTube down below. We always appreciate them. We have been Nerds of the West. My name is Tom.
I'm Sean.
And we will catch you next time.
See ya.